The galaxy had not always been silent. There had been a time when the stars buzzed with signals, merchant fleets haggling across light years, explorers broadcasting discoveries, children on distant colonies laughing into the void through subspace relays. Humanity had spread like a hopeful whisper among the constellations, fragile but unafraid. Then the Armada came. No one knew where they originated. They emerged from a fracture in space near the Perseus Veil, their ships vast and crescent-shaped, like blades forged from starlight. They did not negotiate. They did not respond to greetings. They sent a single transmission on every known frequency. Silence. And silence followed. Planetary defense grids shattered in minutes. Orbital stations burned like paper lanterns. Entire fleets vanished without debris. The Armada moved with cold precision, disabling communication arrays first, isolating systems before harvesting their resources and leaving lifeless husks behind. Within 6 months, the galaxy went quiet. Earth survived only because it hid. Project Aegis, conceived decades earlier as a theoretical contingency, was activated. Humanity shut down long-range transmitters, cloaked its energy signatures, and retreated into defensive stillness. Billions lived underground or beneath shielded domes, listening to the absence where once there had been noise. They did not fight. Not anymore. Except for one man. Commander Elias Vorn had once captained the Horizon's Reach, a deep space exploration vessel. He had watched 2 colonies fall in real time before static swallowed their final screams. He had followed orders, retreat, preserve what remains, survive. But survival felt like surrender. For 2 years, Elias obeyed Earth command. He trained recruits who would never deploy. He studied Armada patterns that always ended the same way. Annihilation. And each night, he replayed the final transmission from his sister on Callisto Station. "We thought they might talk," she had said, her voice steady despite the tremor in the background. "They didn't." Static. That was the moment something inside him refused to stay silent. Project Aegis had another component, whispered about, rarely acknowledged. A prototype vessel designed not for defense, but for penetration. It was smaller than Armada cruisers by magnitudes, but built around experimental technology. A quantum phase drive capable of slipping between measurable space for seconds at a time. Long enough to dodge. Long enough to strike. It had never been tested in combat. It had never been authorized. Elias authorized it himself. He stood alone in the hangar beneath the Himalayan Shield complex, staring at the sleek black hull of the Resolute. Engineers had built it as humanity's last gamble, then buried it when fear overruled ambition. "You'll start a war we can't win," Admiral Ree warned through a secure channel. "We're already losing one," Elias replied. "You'll reveal Earth. I won't let them reach it." There was a long pause. In the silence, Elias heard the entire weight of humanity holding its breath. "Godspeed, Commander," the Admiral finally said, and cut the transmission. The Resolute launched without ceremony. No parade. No broadcast. Only a single encrypted message left behind for Earth Command. "If we remain silent, we are already extinct." Elias navigated toward the nearest Armada harvesting zone, a red dwarf system once home to 3 thriving colonies. Long-range scans showed the familiar crescent silhouettes orbiting the star, their gravity anchors siphoning plasma in colossal streams. He was alone. The cockpit lights dimmed as he engaged the quantum phase drive. Base warp. For a heartbeat, reality fractured into shards of light, and the Resolute slipped forward, reappearing inside the enemy formation. Alarms screamed immediately. The Armada sensed him. "Good," Elias muttered. He targeted the nearest gravity anchor and fired. Human weapons were crude compared to the Armada's elegant beams. But the Resolute carried something new: singularity lances, compressed gravitational spikes designed to destabilize massive structures. The lance struck. For a moment nothing happened. Then the anchor imploded. The shock wave rippled through nearby vessels. One cruiser lost cohesion, its crescent form collapsing inward before detonating in a silent flash. Across the system, Armada ships shifted orientation. Their attention, vast and terrible, locked onto the single human vessel. For the first time in 2 years, the galaxy heard something other than silence. A transmission burst outward from the Resolute on every known frequency. "This is Commander Elias Vorn of Earth," he said, voice steady. "You will not erase us quietly." The Armada responded instantly. Energy beams lanced through space, carving molten scars where the Resolute had been. But Elias was already phasing. In and out of measurable existence, the small human ship darted like a needle among giants. Each reappearance delivered another singularity lance, another wound, another impossible act of defiance. Across hidden human outposts, operators stared at reawakened sensors in disbelief. Is that a human transponder? Someone's broadcasting. They're attacking the Armada. Hope, small and dangerous, flickered. The Armada adapted quickly. Their ships formed a lattice, predicting phase re-entry points with chilling accuracy. A beam grazed the Resolute, tearing through its port shields. Consoles exploded in sparks. Elias tasted blood but kept his hands steady. "One more pass," he whispered. He dove straight toward the largest cruiser, the command vessel orchestrating the harvest. It dwarfed mountains, its surface shimmering with alien script that pulsed like a living heartbeat. Phase drive whined. "Overheating." "Hold together," Elias urged the ship. He emerged directly above the cruiser's core aperture and fired every remaining lance simultaneously. The impact was catastrophic. Gravity twisted violently. The cruiser's crescent arms bent inward as if gripped by an invisible fist. Energy cascaded along its hull in blinding arcs. Then the flagship split apart, consumed by its own destabilized core. A shock wave hurled the Resolute into open space. Systems failed one by one. The phase drive died completely. Elias drifted amid wreckage. Around him, surviving Armada ships hesitated. For the first time since their arrival, their formation fractured, not in attack but in uncertainty. Without the command vessel, their coordination faltered. Several ships broke away, retreating toward the same spatial fracture from which they had first emerged. Across the galaxy, dormant sensors recorded it. The Armada was withdrawing. Not destroyed, not defeated forever, but retreating. Elias exhaled shakily. He opened a final transmission channel, knowing it might be his last. "They can bleed," he said softly. "And if they can bleed, they can fear." Behind him, the red dwarf star burned steadily, no longer shackled by gravity anchors. Earth Command received the message along with live telemetry of the Armada's retreat. Cheers erupted in bunkers that had known only dread. Fleets long grounded began powering up reactors. Engineers reopened shipyards. Humanity was still outmatched. But it was no longer silent. Rescue vessels reached the Resolute hours later. They found Elias unconscious, his ship a skeletal ruin, but intact enough to prove what sensors had already confirmed. One human had forced an alien Armada to step back. In the weeks that followed, other species, long hidden like Earth, began transmitting cautious signals. They too had seen the impossible battle. They too had believed resistance futile. Now they weren't so sure. A coalition formed, fragile but determined. They studied the wreckage Elias had created, reverse-engineered fragments of Armada technology, and prepared not for extinction, but for war on their own terms. Elias recovered slowly in a medical chamber overlooking Earth's blue horizon. Admiral Ree visited him in person. "You disobeyed orders," she said. "Yes, ma'am." "You risked revealing us." "Yes, ma'am." She studied him for a long moment, then allowed the faintest smile. "You also reminded the galaxy who we are." Months later, when the Armada returned in smaller probing forces, they did not find a silent galaxy waiting to die. They found fleets. They found alliances. They found humans broadcasting openly across the stars. "We are still here." History would mark the Battle of the Red Dwarf as the turning point. Not because it ended the war, but because it ended the silence. The Armada had believed fear was contagious. They had been right. They just hadn't expected it to spread to them. And it had begun with a single human who refused to accept that survival meant surrender, who looked into the vast, indifferent dark and chose to speak. The galaxy would never be silent again.